Law firm success strategies will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015, and truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
Hi there, and welcome to Law Firm Success Strategies. I'm your host, Doug Brown. This show is for you if you're a law firm owner, managing partner, or even a practice group leader. You've invested years in honing your legal expertise only to discover that running the business needs a different hat, one that might feel unfamiliar and at times even uncomfortable. And we're here to help with that. And today's guest is my friend and law firm recruiter, Michael Lord. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm so excited for this conversation. You know, we met when I was doing some work with one of my private coaching clients and was wanted to get intelligence, and your name came up as one of the go-to people in the New York, Connecticut metropolitan area. And then we've talked a bunch since then. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to get the insider's view, because what I'm seeing with my private coaching clients, primarily small firms, is how to recruit and retain legal talent, especially finding experienced lawyers who can hit the ground running. So let's just jump right in. What are the biggest pain points that you see firms struggling with when it comes to hiring and managing talent right now?
Well, I think one of the major shifts that we've seen over the last few years is really a lack of volume of candidates that can come and really work at a particular firm. There's just, even when we do a search, we used to years ago have so many candidates that were interested. We used to get in 5, 7, 9 candidates. But now, if we can get 1 or 2 good candidates, that's kind of where we're at right now. There's just not the volume that they used to be. There could be different reasons for that. I think law schools have been churning out fewer lawyers. More lawyers have been leaving the practice. And I also think people are more transient. They move from city to city and state to state based on their own personal lifestyles. And I think all my fellow recruiters and I are always struggling to find good people. But our clients rely on us to do that. So we continue to go out and look and take some unconventional ways to try to find candidates.
Yeah. So what are so many places to go, but what kind of things are you able to do with those unconventional ways that a law firm couldn't do on their own?
Well, I mean, without letting out too many trade secrets,
Right.
we look for potential candidates who want to relocate to an area. So, for instance, if I'm doing a search in Connecticut, I may look at some neighboring states with candidates that went to either University of Connecticut or University of Connecticut Law School or Quinnipiac or things of that. Because maybe they want to come back here. Maybe their family's here, and I just have to reach out and touch them. And they're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I was thinking about doing that. We didn't need to do that a while back, but now that is an area that we have to do. And it's just unlikely that a law firm or even a HR person within a law firm is going to spend that type of time to go into neighboring states to find those types of candidates.
Yeah, I get it. People I'm seeing and working with are so busy trying to handle the deluge of legal work that there's not a lot of time. They have a bigger problem than you do in finding people, of course. One of the things I've seen is massive shifts with expectations and needs as the new generation of legal talent, your millennials who are now into their early 40s and then just entering the legal workforce of Gen Z. What are you seeing, and how is that affecting the recruitment in the marketplace?
Well, I think a lot of the younger associates have never really been through a down market. Even during COVID, the market was other than the first 3 months during COVID, has been really relatively strong. So they don't really know what it's like to be in a down market, but those that are more senior than them have lived through down cycles and have dealt with lack of billable hours, have dealt with layoffs, have dealt with having to change firms quickly because of the economic conditions. So you have the mindset of the younger people, like it's always going to be great. And it won't always be great, but unfortunately it's very difficult to convince them that there is a downshift in the market. So I think a lot of the younger people usually feel they have the leverage. And to that point, they do have the hiring leverage at this point and have held it for a number of years. So when they held the leverage, they're thinking about how things are going to benefit them, whether it's good hours, pay and compensation, hybrid work environment, dress code. They have a list of demands that, is pretty significant, and and as they're in the driver's seat, they can demand that. So that's something that an employer or hiring partner who is a more senior level lawyer, has to cope with. And they hear and they know it too, because they've been hiring over the last several years. So I get all sorts of war stories about, this candidate wanted this, the sun, the moon, and the stars. And, we just couldn't provide it for them in the way that they wanted it. And can we have a different type of candidate? A different type of candidate is out there, Doug. It's just, we have to go find them. So that's the key.
So how are you finding that the law firms are adapting to these new list of demands from the younger lawyers? Are they able to do it effectively?
They are able to do it. It just needs some cajoling from people like me or maybe their HR person that this is just the way that it is now, and in order to get the people that we want. But I feel that there's a resentment, the lingering underlying resentment that this is the way it is now. But I don't know that that's going to get a law firm very far, having that resentment or feeling that somebody isn't doing things the way that they did things 25 years ago is not good. So I work with the clients, and they do come around for sure.
Yeah, and I found that I'm working with the folks after they're in, and I hear it all the time about they're not working hard enough or long enough, and that we could whine about it all day, but it's a reality. So we have to learn to adapt, right? So what are you seeing some common mistakes that firms are committing that make your job more difficult in finding candidates?
Well, I think that, starting at the initial part of the relationship between myself and a client, oftentimes I have to ask for a written description for the job. Mm-hmm. Rather than, and that should be something the firm does by itself, in conjunction with the partners that are looking. They should come out with a really detailed job specifications list of what they're looking for, both from a substantive point of view, what type of law, what subspecialties, and also interpersonal skills as well. Put it all in the written description. Have a range of salary for me. And then we can discuss it. Oftentimes I get a call, I'm looking for a litigator, and what's the going rate out there? I'll pay it. That's not really a lot of information for me, and that I can do it for you, but it just takes a lot longer that way. And I wish the firm would do it themselves and then come to me with it and say, listen, this is what we plan on getting. Tell us if we're at, off base. And I think that's the much better way, because the more organized, the more diligent, the more deliberate a firm is in coming up with their job specifications of what they're looking for, it's going to be easier for me, and we won't waste a week or 10 days discussing what type of person is going to work.
Yeah. Well, that gets to another good point in terms of if you had to suggest, I guess whenever any of us are working with clients, there are things we just wish that they would do to make our lives easier. The job specification is one of them. But if you could wave your magic wand and have a fully prepared managing partner come to you, what would she or he have done to be ready to be a good business partner and help you make your job easier so they get the better candidates quicker?
Okay, this is what I would like to hear on the phone. Mike, listen, we're going to send over a detailed job specifications. It's going to contain all the attributes of what we're looking for in a candidate. It's going to contain a target salary range. It's going to contain a target bonus range. We're going to send you our written benefits package, which is going to include health insurance and 401k information. Hold that in your files until we have somebody that we like and want to convey that to, but at least you'll have it at the outset. And our interview process is going to be as follows. We're going to do one round with partner X. If we like them, they're going to come back and meet 3 more partners and the managing partner. And then we'll likely, if we still like that person, then we'll probably have them meet a couple of associates while they're here. And then we'll be in a position to either convey an offer or not. And if we do convey an offer and the associate candidate would like to come back and meet with more people, we're amenable to that. That would be a terrific phone call to receive.
Yeah, that sounds like a dream phone call. Like
you wanted a dream, Doug. I gave you a dream.
I wanted it. So it would probably also include, and we're going to respond promptly to the candidates you send to us.
That would be a terrific thing as well. Thank you for adding that. Certainly within a couple of days, 2-3 days at the most, or just an email saying, hey, listen, I got the resume of so-and-so and I'm at a conference. I'm not going to be able to review it and I'll get back to you on Friday. That's fine too. Or hand it off to one of your partners to look at it too. And that's the other thing I'll add, that it would be great if there was more than one person that I could go to get information. That would move things more quickly, because inevitably one partner is busy with something. And if I can go back and forth and get information, that would be helpful.
So when you present an opportunity to a candidate, what kind of questions are they asking you? Because it seems like the interview process might even have flipped, where the candidate wants to interview the firm as much as the firm interviews the candidate, right?
I think that's in some cases the case. And I think that is fine. It just can't be outwardly done. You can ask your questions, but you can do it as a candidate. You can do it in a way that doesn't feel like you're interviewing the firm. But to answer your question, when we go and talk to a candidate, usually the number one question is, what do they pay? And we have an old adage here at our search firm: it's never about the money until it's about the money. And that's really, it's been constant like that for the over 20 years that we've been in business. So compensation is still the key to the castle. There are other things that are sometimes equally important. A lot of candidates ask about mentoring. So that is an important concept that the law firm should be aware of. They want a mentoring relationship so they can improve as a lawyer. So those two come to mind, very, very quickly. Hours is another one that they ask about. What's the minimum or maximum billable hours? And also, even a smarter question is, what are the associates usually billing there? Give me a range. I don't want a range that's in the employee handbook. I want a range that real live associates are working. And that's another important component of what I'll be asked by a candidate.
Yeah, this is such an important topic, because you do the research and you read the articles and you hear something like comp is number 7 on the list of things that are important, and all these other things are more important than comp. But you're hearing that you don't even get to be in the conversation unless you're in the right comp range.
Yeah, I get to comp first, because if we're in different area codes, then it's not something I want to spend time on. It's not something I want my client to be involved with. And it's not something that's going to be worthwhile for the associates. So I tend to get to the compensation question earlier in the process rather than later, since it's such a key component. And if I'm talking 150 and they're talking 275, then we're just in completely different
Yeah,
places.
that's a pretty big bridge to
It's a
cross
big
on
range,
soft
and
factors. Yeah.
you know, I don't know what the range is that we can stay in. Maybe 5% or less. You know, is something we can continue the discussion, because there may be other attributes of a particular job that would be appealing to a candidate that they may want to stay in the game. But I'm always worried about those candidates, because at the end of the day, they may like everything they hear. They just can't afford to take a pay cut. And so that is something that I'm out there looking for on behalf of my clients, because I don't want
Yeah.
them to go through the whole process and then get a turn down because the money's not enough.
Yeah, it's important to have that conversation early, because if you can't afford to take the job, then you need to move on. Beyond compensation, you mentioned a few things. You mentioned compensation. You mentioned hours, real hours, not just out of the handbook. What are the other kind of things you're seeing that are really attractive to some of the top talent in terms of the softer factors that drive so much of the decision making?
Client contact is another thing that we hear. They want to have a direct line to the firm's clients to hear their business problems directly from their own voice. I think that is something that we hear frequently. We also hear, can I work remote? You know, that's another thing which has taken on a life of its own after COVID, because everybody got very comfortable in their home working. We're hearing that less now, but there are candidates that we contact and that say if I have to go in the office anything more than 2 days per week, I'm not applying. You know, it's a line in the sand. And if my client wants them in 5 days a week, then we don't have a match and everybody moves on. But that's something that I definitely hear more in the last couple of years than I've heard before. So those are two things, and I'll stop there if you want to follow up.
Okay. When you're working with firms, do you find yourself working with firms who are trying to fix like a rotating door of associates? They've got a high attrition and they're struggling to retain talent. Are they coming to you for help with that?
They are. It's a difficult process for the firm and for us. It's unfortunate that those things happen, but at some point, it's just the way things go. And it's usually that the principals of a law firm don't recognize that they have a problem, or they just realize that everybody that's coming in and out is just a bad lawyer or a bad person. And we just have to keep looking, and we'll find that one great person. But there's not enough self-evaluation. There's a reason why there are firms that have high attrition rates. Mm-hmm. And it's because the principals don't treat those people right. And then they get a reputation. I mean, there are some firms in the New York area that I will not, they've called me. I won't obviously identify them. I won't work with them. Because I don't want to be in a position of putting somebody into a firm that it's not going to work out. And,
Sure.
And also if somebody calls me and says, listen, I got your name from so-and-so and you know a lot about in the market. I just got an offer from this firm. What do you think? I'll tell them, check LinkedIn and find how many associates used to work there and are working somewhere else. And that's readily accessible information, Doug. And
yeah,
they can find it. And the firm should know that associates are looking for that information.
That was another thing of a smart associate. I mean, the people you're trying to place are smart people. They understand how to research. They don't want to step into a bad situation. So how are they researching that opportunity on their own? I mean, whether it's LinkedIn, or are they looking at things like Glassdoor or reviews of the firm or other things? How are they getting their information about the firms?
Yeah, I mean, Glassdoor is okay. It's I don't know how much credence you can give to it because you just
I
don't
know
know.
it's a lot of complainers on there.
Yeah, you don't know who's you really want to speak to a person. So I think if you're an associate and you're looking at a firm for, and you have a job offer, you're close to a job offer, they're getting on LinkedIn, they're looking at people they know that work there or used to work there, and they're contacting them directly and saying, "Hey, I have an offer from this firm, and it looks like you used to work there, and tell me about it." And why'd you leave? What'd you like about it? What didn't you like? So yeah, the smart ones are doing that. They'll ask me if I know. They'll ask me about the attrition rates at a particular firm. They'll ask me about whether associates have been elevated to partner or counsel. How frequently does that happen? Those are the types of questions that associates will ask in order to evaluate a
Mhm.
firm.
Do you find that firms are coming to you and they want to do more than just hire an individual, might be wanting to acquire another firm or a practice group? Is that kind of thing happening? And is that stuff that people like you work with?
Yeah, no, there are definitely a good number of firms that are looking for either a solo practitioner or a small group to join their firm. Maybe it's a complementary practice area, or they can assume the work of a retiring partner. But that is especially for firms, in the 20 attorney to 50 attorney area. Bringing on three new lawyers it's a big thing. It's
Hmm.
a big deal both financially and also culture wise to
Hmm.
bring in a group. But there are a lot of firms that are looking for it, and there are also small shops that are looking to merge in for various reasons. So that is something that we come across, on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Yeah. When we first doing my research before we met, one of the things I really liked was, I grew up and I spent my practicing days, in Connecticut. So I'm very familiar with that market. And what I really liked about how we were interacting was you've been in the market for a lot of years. You really know the market you're in, right?
Yes.
So when somebody's firms looking to bring somebody in for help, how important is that local knowledge in terms of um, either as a candidate or as a firm?
Well, I think let's take Connecticut, for instance, because that's the state that you practiced in, and one that I do a lot of placements in. It's a very small bar. People know each other's reputation usually before they even walk in the door. And, they even had cases together or transactions together. The whole Hartford, New Haven, Fairfield County troika of areas is just, people know each other, and the lawyers that are very successful and have built good practices and build great relationships with other lawyers and been active in community activities and bar associations. Everybody wants to talk to them, and,
Hmm.
and, and others that haven't done that are less likely to get a look, or in some cases, they've had, they've been tough lawyers to get along with, and that reputation definitely precedes them. And I hear that over the phone with different folks that, so and so knows that partner, and they've always been tough to deal with, and that's somebody we would not want to invite into our firm. So everything you do as a lawyer, and the relationships that you build goes along with you from the time you get out of law school
Hmm.
in your 20s or 30s, all the way until you retire. And it's different in New York.
So how is the New York market different than the Connecticut market that way?
I think the New York market is different. Just there's so many more lawyers, so many more law firms that oftentimes um, firms don't come in contact with each other, even if they're in the same practice area. And therefore, it's more about credentials and experience, and a recruiter saying this person's a good might be a good fit for you. So they're flying a little bit more blind in New York. I mean, that doesn't mean that they don't know or they can't do the same things they do in Connecticut, which is
Sure.
look on LinkedIn and find a friend of a friend to check somebody out. But I always get the feeling they're flying more blind in New York just because of the nature of the employment market there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Connecticut is a pretty small market, and New York is gigantic. But it is a good point that those who, I think I heard you say, those who spend or invest the time in being involved in more than just billing hours, but being out in the legal community, building their reputation, have a better time getting looks than just somebody who was a good soldier and cranked their hours out, but isn't well known.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, it's important. Usually the people that are active in community associations and bar associations are usually rainmakers too. So it all fits together for them. So they're out there, they're marketing, and oftentimes when you're marketing, not necessarily looking for business, that's where you bring in business. I mean, it just kind of works out that way. You just have to be out there. There's I read an article a number of years ago. It's like, you got to go out and play in traffic. You got to be out there. And, if you're holed up, then people don't know you. You got to get out there, especially when you're younger, because then you have, more years for that to grow. Those it's a little bit like money, right? If you invest it early, it tends to be more when you're older than waiting. So, for the young lawyers out there, get out there and meet people in ways that are comfortable for you. And that may not be a traditional way. It may be through social media. It may be through an organization that people don't know about, but is something that's near and dear to your heart. It doesn't have to be the traditional way.
Yeah, that's something I taught even back to my young lawyers days is that you're always on stage. Everything you do at your kid's soccer game or, at the local Oktoberfest, especially in a small community, every single thing you do affects how people perceive you. It doesn't mean you should be authentic and be yourself, but also be intentional about, how you're showing up in the world, and especially with social media too, because that's a big deal.
Yes.
Do you, I asked you the magic wand question earlier about managing partners come to you because that's who hires you, right? That's the firms that hire you. Do you have candidates come to you directly as well?
Oh, sure.
So what's your magic? If you could wave your magic wand for a candidate coming to you, what would you want them to come to you with?
Well, if I could wave my magic wand, I would like a candidate who comes to me and can say why they want to move firms in one or two sentences, direct and to the point. And it happens infrequently. So when it does happen, I'm like, wow, somebody explained. Mike, I got your name from so-and-so. I'm moving from Austin, Texas to Stamford, Connecticut because blank, blank. So now I need to look for a position in Stamford, Connecticut. I got it. It's understandable. Or I want to transition from one practice area to another, or, whatever it is, but really get that reason out first. And I think that would be the number one thing. I can read about your career and what you've done, where you went to law school from your resume. You don't need to tell me, hi, Mike, my name is so-and-so. I went to Stanford Law School. I went to Georgia Tech undergrad. I can read that on a resume. Thank you. But having the reason why you're motivated to move, and also your salary target. If you can have those two things up front, that would be a great thing.
Terrific. One of the things I work with firms on, and I think you support it in the work you do, is trying to plan for the future strategically. So what do you see as, the trends that we're seeing now that we talked about at the top of the show? If you were to look ahead, what trends or things are coming that managing partners should be thinking about when it comes to staffing?
I mean, one of the strange things that I find is that managing partners, take Connecticut for example, they're firms that are getting older. The partners are getting older, and some are retiring, some are keeping their
practices, but they're gonna move on soon, just health wise or retirement wise. And I'll get a request from partners asking for somebody to come in and to succeed that person and their book of business, but bring their own as well. And that really limits the type of person that I can recruit, because many people don't have a book of business. So it always struck me as odd. If you want them to succeed to book a business, why do you want them to bring a book of business? Because then apparently at the end of the day, when the other person retired, they'd have too much work. They'd have all of the work of the person who's succeeding as well as their own. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think I know the reason why, and I'll speak to those managing partners, because you want to bring in somebody who has the experience of attracting, retaining a client in that cycle of getting them on retainer or billing and collecting. And that is a certain skill to have. And I can understand why, but if it really limits our group of candidates that we can recruit from, then it sometimes seems to be not helpful in the search. And that maybe we have to look for a candidate who has a little bit of a book of business or wants to bid. Naturally, the person who doesn't have a book of business but is a very good attorney is naturally looking for a way to build a practice. So either that's getting clients one at a time, or succeeding in inheriting a book of business. But that's kind of an obstacle that I see. And I've come up with my own answer as to why managing partners, but they should really think about whether they really feel like they need to have somebody with a full book of business, because I'm not really sure how that works out at the end.
Yeah. Do you want to share why you think that is?
I mean, my personal theory is, I guess I mentioned it, that they want somebody who's had experience in being a rainmaker, and that is a certain skill. And if they feel like somebody is a senior associate type and hasn't really done that, maybe they're good substantively on the practice of law. So they come in, they succeed in terms of they start turning the work over, from the retiring partner who's, deciding to move on. But because they don't have a skill in how to retain clients, that slowly the practice diminishes. Yeah. And it's not able to keep up at its pace. And that's a concern. So if they have somebody who's already built a practice, then they're not as concerned about that. But
sure,
that can be worked out via salary. And maybe that particular attorney, need some assistance in how to retain clients and how to build the practice. Maybe they need a rainmaking coach, or maybe they need to work with another partner who's very good at rainmaking to learn the tricks of the trade, just like they learn the tricks of the trade on how to be a good lawyer.
Yeah, that's often where I will find them is, a person I've got a partner who wants to move up. They're a good lawyer and they've got some good business acumen, but they don't know the plays to run, and they need somebody to help them learn all the unwritten rules of what it takes to be a good rainmaker and a client retention specialist, which is often different than what it means to be a good lawyer and a tactician.
It is a very different skill set, and there are some great rainmakers that are so-so lawyers, and some awesome lawyers that are so-so rainmakers. It is a different skill set. But when you have somebody who's both, then you have. My joke is, when you have somebody who's a great rainmaker and a great lawyer, what do you call them? Partner.
That's right. That's right. I've talked with some firms that who are in the position of that small firm that wants to have their own exit plan and maybe merge into a larger firm, and some of them have bought into this idea that there should be some large multiple or payout, from the new firm for all of their goodwill and client base. I know that's probably a whole nother topic, but are you seeing firms do that? Is that a realistic expectation that a firm's going to write a check for somebody's book of business?
The short answer is no. They'll work it through your compensation, and there's various methods
Sure.
to incentivize attorneys to keep up with their practice, but there's not just going to be a blank check just because we now have your name at our firm. That is so wonderful and great for our practice that we're just going to write you a check apart from your compensation. I haven't seen that. I mean, I can't say that it hasn't happened, but I haven't.
I just think it's important to hear, from someone like you who's experienced in the area, because there's this notion that, maybe you deserve a big payout for all of your work. But the fact is that if the market's not providing it, then it's not a thing going forward. Well, I really appreciate the time you put in today. Do you have any other words of wisdom for managing partners who are trying to win the war on talent?
Sure. I have a couple things that I was thinking about for the folks that are listening to this. I mean, staffing your firm, whether it's lawyers or paralegals or administrative assistants or whatever, it's a really important component of the practice, and the choices that you make on who you hire have a profound effect on the success of your law firm. So I think the people that are in charge of hiring need to carve out the necessary time to make sure they are doing it to their best ability. And oftentimes I feel like the staffing end of things is you're carving time out of my billable day. And I could be charging clients for this time and conceivably I could be making more money for our firm. But I think you have to look at it more from a percentage. I have to spend 5%, 10%, 15% of my time on staffing, and I have to welcome that as a part of my day and as a part of my responsibility, and think of it that it's an important component. And if I'm not willing to do that as a partner, then maybe somebody else should be willing to do that. And another thing, I guess, interrelated to that point is, when you are sending out people to interview candidates, make sure that it's the best people for that job. Some people are better interviewers than others. You want people that be able to talk about your firm in a way that is captivating and interesting, and have people that have good questioning skills and are very conversational. And there are people that are good at that. And those are the people you want to put out front. And finally, I would say that, when you're interviewing a candidate, have a personal touch. The leverage is not with employers right now. It's not, just 2 Zoom interviews and an offer, or a Zoom interview and in person and an offer. During the course of the interview, you've learned something about that candidate that's interesting. And if you haven't, you're probably not making them an offer. But if you are making them an offer, you have learned something about them. So make sure you show that, when you extend the offer, and that you're just not another candidate sitting in front of them that, you're just staring at them. That's 1,800 hours of billable time right there. Get in, sit at your desk, and let's go.
Yeah.
We're dealing with people, and we're dealing with lawyers that want to be thought of. And I think that's an important thing to think about when you're thinking about staffing, your law firm.
Yeah, I love that. And there is the new model going forward is that, the interview isn't to weed out the people who aren't qualified. That's why you have somebody like you doing that upfront work. It's if they're getting in through you, then the focus shifts into A, make sure you think there's a fit, and B, make sure if you think there's a fit, they see the same thing.
Yeah, and the other thing, Doug, is that it doesn't end at the interview and the offer and the acceptance. It's trying to stem attrition through 2 things. Not only giving them good work and good feedback and mentoring and introducing them to clients and all the things that I've mentioned throughout our discussion today, but also taking a personal look at your attorneys and having that personal touch, knowing their interests, doing things for them that are nice, it's not just about a bonus. I mean, how often have I heard managing partners saying, you know what, I just read in the newspaper that this rock band that this associate likes is coming. Why don't you buy 2 tickets for them and a guest? It's probably not that expensive. Or a sporting event, or just something that shows that you're paying attention to what their interests. I think it goes a long way to building a long-term relationship.
That's such an important point, because it is far more expensive to replace someone than it is to retain them.
Absolutely.
I just have kind of more of a background question. I guess we've covered a lot of the things, but tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into recruiting. You've been doing it for such a long time.
Sure. I was a practicing attorney in the 90s and worked for 2 firms and familiar with the practice of law. I like to say I know just enough law to be dangerous. But I left the practice in 2000 and joined a recruiting firm out of New York, which was a great training ground and had some wonderful people and great clients. And after a couple of years, I felt it was something that I could do on my own, and wanted to launch into a entrepreneurial position. So I opened up my own company in the summer of 2002. So I just celebrated 21 years in the field. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And in 2007, I had a lawyer out of a firm in New York City that wrote to me via email. I had no idea who he was, saying, again, going back to what we talked about before, he stated in the first sentence, I'm going to be a legal recruiter. I've already evaluated that. The only question that remains is, where am I going to work? So I thought that was a very good way. So right away I was interested, even though I wasn't in the hiring market. And I interviewed with him, and he joined me in 2007, and he's my partner today. And another gentleman that I worked with at my first agency joined me in 2009. So it's the 3 of us, and then we have a researcher that helps us with candidate development, and so it's the 4 of us. And that's where I am today.
Good for you. So if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you to learn more, and they were to follow the tips that you provided, the wave your magic wand questions, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can just give me a call. I'll just give my direct number. It's Mike Lord, Lord. My number is 646-258-1761. And my email address is Michael, Michael, at mlordco, mlordco.com. And you can learn more about me on our website, www.mlordco.com.
Well, thank you so much for making the time. I'm fortunate to have this opportunity to then record great conversations. We've talked about this stuff before, and I'm so thrilled to have you on the show today. So till next time, this is Doug Brown for Law Firm Success Strategies. If you have a topic that you would like to share or you would like to hear about, please go ahead and reach out to me with the address in the show notes, and we look forward to our next episode. Bye for now.